Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Blind Guy,
His Wife,
and Their Life. Today is not one of our typical episodes. We're going to be talking about some tough things that we've seen in the news here recently, the most recent being the murder of George Floyd at the hands of Minnesota police.
Now, one thing that we're going to be talking about today is what it's like for Corey to be not just a black guy in America, but a blind guy that is black in America. Is he more vulnerable? Has he been more vulnerable? So we'll briefly talk about those things and our experiences with that as well. And more importantly, right now for you guys, we're going to talk about how we as artists, how we manage tough situations. We are storytellers. Corey's a playwright. And so we're going to show you a little bit of an excerpt from a story or a stage play that we presented and created. It was a major production. However, we're only going to show you a snippet. So, Corey, did you want to tell them a little bit about this scene?
This scene that you're about to see, it comes from a stage play I wrote with LaQuita Marie. She choreographed and directed it. And it shows a storyteller that is just completed teaching people a lesson about life through the story, and they're about to go about their daily business when suddenly the scene is disrupted. So it is a very emotional scene, so we do want to give you that caveat before you actually watch it in front of children, or so you may want to watch it yourself. But again, it's a lot of great harmony and a lot of great acting talent on the stage in this scene.
All right, let's go.
The hero! And that was the end of that.
most of us Africans. The day we was put on the slave ships and put to work in America.
All right, welcome back, guys. So that was Wo Yaya. We are going, where are we going? And it speaks to us, it resonates with Corey and I. It's one of our statement pieces because we've used it in several productions to just talk about, now that we're here, now that we're in this country, where are we going? What control do we have? What can we do?
It also bears the question of who is accountable for this system, this ongoing system of oppression, like colonization, Jim Crow laws, prison farms, chain gangs, all those things bear to come to mind when you listen to that song, Where Are We? Where are we going with this? When we do our research to develop content for our stage play productions or educational material that serves as arts and activism, we don't just rely on historical documentation and talking to people who've had those experiences. We also have had firsthand experiences ourselves. At the time I could actually see, I was a teenager, and I went to a theme park and two white kids were spitting on people on the rides, and then two African-American teenagers got off the ride and punched them. So when they gave the description to the police officer there, they told him it was a black man wearing a black t-shirt and white Nikes. So I didn't fit the description, but they still were going to arrest me and detain me and take me out of the park. And there were a crowd of teenagers that were black teenagers that were there with me. And we were telling the police officer that, no, I didn't punch anybody. I didn't do anything. And it wasn't until another white teenager came along that said, no, this is not the person that punched them, that they let me go. And nevertheless, even though they let me go, they never addressed the fact that the two white boys were actually spitting on people. So I got accosted for doing something I didn't do, and they just got off scot-free for doing something that many people had already pointed out that they had done. So that's an experience that I can draw from. Fast forwarding to now, where I can't see, I just can't imagine being in a situation like George Floyd, where I don't look like a typical blind person. I don't carry the standard white cane. I don't wear the glasses that people are accustomed to seeing blind people wear. And so I can only imagine if a police officer came up and said, hey, you need to move this car, and I'm not responding, and because I don't realize he's talking to me, then that might escalate into a bad situation. And it's all stems from a misunderstanding. It's that I can't see. It's not that I'm being disrespectful. I just can't see. Look at how how America was colonized. It started out with the Virginia Company. Basically, you can research how these companies, these colonization companies, came into play to an ongoing system of oppression, starting with once slavery was over, the Jim Crow laws.
There's a really good PBS documentary about slavery, like the new slavery, sharecropping. It specifically talks about that one form. So definitely do your research on sharecropping. When you say Jim Crow laws, definitely research what were Jim Crow laws. If you don't know, even if you think you know, go ask somebody, because that's recent history. There are people that are still alive that have suffered under Jim Crow laws. And nowadays they're teaching our children in schools. One of our children's questions on an assignment was, what are the pros and cons of Jim Crow laws? Now, if you know what Jim Crow laws are, then you wouldn't find a pro. And if you did, then you would have to answer the question, who was the pro for?
So when you do your research, like I said, starting with the Virginia companies like that, and when you go into the post-slavery era of sharecropping and Jim Crow laws, you'll see the pattern of how the system was established to keep free and cheap labor as a resource for the wealthy, and it was facilitated by the government. And that even goes on today with the privatization of prisons, where corporations are actually running prison systems now, and they're benefiting from that financially. So
who is accountable? That's the question, because when we research that question of who's financing the prisons and how are they getting prisoners, how are they obtaining them, and what is allowed in order to obtain them, we encourage you to definitely research the school to prison pipeline.
We relate our stories and our stage plays, and when we do our research, we also get some firsthand accounts from people that have actually lived in a lot of these situations. And when we're talking about the prison, the school pipeline, and the chain gangs and things of that nature, even my grandfather had experiences moonshining with people that weren't black, and so helping them out. So he was getting arrested and being sent on what they call on the road to help build highways and to clear trees.
Now, my grandfather was actually, as a child, he was on a sharecropping farm in South Carolina. And so your grandfather, as an adult, he was doing what was popularized on the Dukes of Hazzard, moonshining, because that's what the Dukes of Hazzard did, right? They were like
moonshiners.
And that's the reason why they had the fast car. So their experience was sensationalized. Your grandfather was a moonshiner. He was imprisoned. Now, when you said on the road, that means that's
the chain gang. That's a slang term for being on the chain gang. Like I said, clearing those highways, chopping down trees, clearing woods to make room for roads and for commercial development, housing development. So again,
he was a victim of the prison farm system and the chain gang system.
Exactly. And so, you know, people like my grandfather were criminalized, but then you had the moonshine runners that helped to give birth to NASCAR. Earlier this week, we actually saw people marching in the protest, and the historical goal of protesting has been to cause a financial disruption for businesses, whether it's the sit-ins, the boycotts, or peaceful demonstrations at the site of a business. The idea is to disrupt the financial income of that particular business that you're protesting against. So, LaQuita, you know, you were at a local store and you saw a protest.
Yeah, they had to close down 2 big box stores in that area because the protesters were coming. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they were making announcements over the loudspeakers that the store is closing. And, you know, as we're leaving, we're seeing other stores in the area closing. And yeah, they were disrupting the financial progress.
It also happened at a local fast food franchise restaurant that was in our area, where they actually were able to shut down the business successfully 2 days in a row, causing that financial disruption. But you can also have financial disruption by taking your economic power to create political power, like it was recommended by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and especially by Booker T. Washington in his Atlanta Compromise, where he said, cast down your buckets where you are. Basically, have your own businesses, build your own businesses in your own communities, support those businesses, and then your economic power will give you political power, as was evidenced by the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the turn of the 20th century. Also, for the those that ascribe to the talented 10th theory of W.E.B. Du Bois, those that are out there that are of the top 10% in wealth as far as people of color, specifically African Americans, use your dollars to build those businesses, those grocery stores, and those restaurants, those other types of businesses, to give people an option to go to so that they can effectively boycott, like Dr. King did with the Montgomery bus boycott. So we hope that you found this information valuable today. Like I said, this was not our typical episode where we actually shared insight from me just being a blind guy, my experiences with my wife doing our everyday life. We decided that we wanted to actually address what was going on in the current environment. If you found this information valuable, what can they do, LaQuita Marie?
Well, you guys, we always ask and we encourage you today to give this video a thumbs up so that other people can see this content as well. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and of course share it with someone else. Hopefully someone else finds it as valuable when you share it with them.
So thank you for joining us for another episode of A Blind Guy,
His Wife,
and Their Life.